Hey feline friends, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about the worst part of being a cat parent, which is having to be away from your cat. Okay, but in all seriousness, it can be really nerve-wracking, especially for first-time cat parents who have to be away from home for longer periods of time. But rest assured, your cat will be okay as long as you take the right steps to ensure that they're properly cared for while you're gone. So today I'm gonna give my tips on how I ensure both Mika and I stay sane if I have to leave home for a few days or longer. Starting off with the basics, there are basically two main routes you can go when you're looking for cat care options. The first route is cat boarding, which is essentially when you drop your cat off at like a cat hotel, vet clinic, or even another person's house and board them overnight so that someone can give them around the clock care. Now, generally speaking, boarding tends to work better for dogs than it does for cats because cats are very much creatures of habit. Cats generally don't like being taken away from familiar surroundings, so once they're set up at home, they want to stay there. That being said, cat boarding could be a good option for certain scenarios or certain types of cat personalities. So for example, if your cat is extremely socialized, incredibly brave, and doesn't mind meeting new animals or strangers, then cat boarding might not be a bad option for them and they might be totally fine with it. Another example would be if your cat has some extreme medical needs and really does need around the clock supervision. In this case, it might be an appropriate option to find a vet clinic that does overnight boarding so that a trained veterinarian can carry out your cat's medical care while you're gone. But that being said, if your cat is pretty healthy, but they're very, very shy, skittish, or they don't really do well with new people or other animals, then cat boarding is probably not the route to go. And that brings me to option number 2, which is finding a drop-in cat sitter. So a drop-in cat sitter is someone who comes to your home or your apartment 1 to 2 times a day and does all of your cat's daily care needs and also checks in to make sure that your cat is okay. And this is actually what I do for Mika whenever me and my husband have to go away for long periods of time. Mika is a very, very shy and skittish kitty to the point where, she's really only comfortable with me. Even when I do get a drop-in sitter, I really have to instruct them not to overstay and really just make sure that all of Mika's immediate care needs are taken care of for the day and then leave, because otherwise Mika might not even eat or drink for a while if there's a stranger in our house for too long. That said, if your cat is pretty familiar with your sitter or they're okay with people other than you, it's generally recommended that a sitter stay 30 minutes to an hour once or twice a day to ensure that they leave time to play with your cat and give them the enrichment they need so that they don't become bored or lonely. It's really important that you have good communication with whatever cat sitter you hire, whether that's a friend or a professional, because every cat is different. So the sitter will need to know some specific do's and don'ts for your cat in order to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So in my case, I actually have like a living document of all of Mika's care instructions that I can easily email to anyone who looks after Mika. It's 3 pages long. That might sound a little intense. I don't know if other cat owners do this, but it's actually way easier for me to have this 3-page document than to like constantly write up text on what Mika's care routine is. So the first page is just her feeding instructions, the second page is her litter box instructions, and the third page is any other general needs that Mika has and a little bit more about her temperament and whether or not she likes to play. And personally, I would recommend making a document like this for your cat too, in case you constantly kind of have to find different sitters. And that actually brings me to my next point, which is where to find a cat sitter. So if you're lucky enough to live near close friends or family, asking them is always a great option because you already know them and you trust them. But in our case, we live fairly far from our families and all of my close friends in the area are very allergic to cats. So I opt to hire a professional cat sitter whenever we have to leave. And there's a bunch of different sites where you can look for cat sitters, but I personally use Rover, which is an app, but I believe they have a website too. I just prefer to use the app on my phone. But essentially this app lets you browse and book with professional sitters who also go through enhanced background checks. This is starting to sound a little bit like an ad, so I just want to clarify that I'm not sponsored by Rover. I just happened to come across this app when I was looking for recommendations through Reddit. Every sitter also has their own profile explaining whether or not they have pets, what their experience is, and you can also see their daily rates for drop-in sitting. I will say though, there are a lot of sitters on Rover that specifically work with dogs, so it's just important to make sure that you hire or reach out to a sitter that specifies that they do take care of cats as well. And another thing I really like about Rover, if you decide to use it, is that they have a map view function, which allows you to put in your address and kind of visualize where different sitters are located. Because I personally like to find sitters who are within walking distance, so that way if, you know, anything does come up, any emergencies, I can reach out to them and know that they're only a short walk away. And luckily I've never run into any emergencies yet, but it's just nice to have that ease of mind. Speaking of emergencies, I know it can still be really nerve-wracking leaving your cat with someone who's just dropping in once or twice a day. So something else that I would recommend if you're sort of an anxious cat parent like me is to get a Furbo camera or some sort of security camera so that you can monitor your cat while you're away. I talked a little bit about this in my other videos, but I personally have a Furbo pet camera. I have the dog version because I didn't know the cat version existed, so it'll send me like little funny messages throughout the day asking me if I want to check on my dog, but that doesn't really matter. So I put the Furbo camera right next to Mika's food bowl in the living room, and that way I can just make sure that she's eating. And it's also a really good location because I'm able to kind of rotate the camera through the Furbo app so I can see the entire living room and even inside part of our bedroom to kind of peek and see if Mika's okay. And another thing that's really nice about Furbo is that it does alert you through the app if there's like a really loud noise or your cat is crying really loudly. So if anything seems off, I know to also alert my pet sitter to maybe go check on Mika. The Furbo isn't necessary, but I just find that it really eases my own anxiety while I'm away. Oh, another really important thing is if you do get some sort of security camera or a Furbo camera, just remember to give your sitter a heads up that you're monitoring your place, because no one wants to be secretly recorded, and I think it might even be illegal in some states. So yeah, just make sure that you give them a heads up. Another thing I will mention with Rover, and not even just Rover, I think there's other sites like Trusted House Sitters where people can also come live inside your house to take care of your cat. Not every sitter on Rover does this, but there are certain sitters who will specify this on their profile. So if your cat does have more supervision requirements or medical needs and you'd rather not take them out of their house, then you can opt for a sitter to come live inside your place. Some people might not be super comfortable with that, but it is an option if that's something that you're interested in. Now, I haven't used Trusted House Sitters, but some of my friends have, and this site is a little different in that you look for people who are looking basically for temporary housing, and I believe they actually won't even charge you for their pet sitting services because they're either, you know, going on vacation or they have some sort of work rotation in a different city and they just need temporary housing. So in exchange for giving them housing, they will house sit and also pet sit. Like I said, I haven't used this service. Some of my friends have and had good experiences, so I can't speak to it too much, but that's also another option. And before I end the video, I just want to give 3 additional tips for people who are looking for sitters that they've never booked with. Tip number 1 is always look at your sitter's reviews. Although it's great that Rover does enhanced background checks, that doesn't mean that the quality of the sitters on Rover are all the same. Every sitter's profile will have reviews from past clients just talking about their experience, and that's been really helpful for me to gauge whether or not the sitter that I want to book is communicative, responsible, and knows what they're doing. Tip number 2 is don't forget the little logistical details. So every pet sitter is different and every owner is different. Some owners never meet the sitter before they go on vacation. They kind of just leave the key under their doormat for their sitter to come in. But other sitters or owners will opt to schedule a meetup with the sitter that they book before they go on vacation. And that way you can also introduce your sitter to your cat while you're home so that your cat doesn't get totally freaked out if they come without having been introduced to them. And if for whatever reason you're unable to do a meetup before you leave, just make sure you kind of smoothen out the logistical details of how you're gonna get the key to your sitter and how they're gonna drop it off afterwards. And then finally, before you leave, just make sure that your sitter knows where all of your cat's care items are. So make sure, you know, you leave the food out, or you let them know whether the food is in a cabinet or a drawer. Make sure the litter is accessible somewhere they can find it. So yeah, just these little things to remember before you leave to make sure your cat sitter can carry out everything without any hiccups. All right, that pretty much sums up this video. I feel like a lot of this video was me rambling a little bit, but with the holidays coming up, I know a lot of cat parents are probably looking for cat care options, and I kind of had to do some trial and error to figure out a good system for finding cat care for Mika, so just wanted to put this out there in case it's helpful for anyone else. All right, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!